Everything around you is alive. We live in a world where the palette is overwhelmingly gray on blue. If you're lucky, you get a sporadic smudge of green. Here, you can see the world breathe. Highways are replaced by streams, cars by canoes. Your eyes think that you're surrounded by land, but it's a trick. Underneath the growth, more water, a quiet resistance. You follow one path today, and by tomorrow, it's gone. There is no place in the Philippines that carries more mystery than the Agusan Marsh. Some people see these wetlands merely as ecosystems and important biodiverse areas. Others see them as big bags of cash, land to be turned into highly efficient farms. But a few people see them as a home. And this is their story. The Agusan Marsh Wildlife Sanctuary stretches across 40,000 plus hectares of wetlands, roughly the size of Manila. It's one of the biggest in Southeast Asia and one of the most vital in the Philippines. A Ramsar site, globally recognized but barely talked about. It's all interconnected by lakes, rivers, marshes, and ponds. It acts like a giant sponge during typhoon season, absorbing floodwaters for the entire Agusan River Basin. Without it, who knows what would happen to neighbor towns like Butuan. It's home to rare birds, floating villages, and indigenous communities who've learned to live with the rise and fall of the water. But it's under threat. Pollution and climate change are slowly choking it.
Life can not simply exist without the Agusan Marsh. The marsh protects everything here. When you talk of the Agusan Marsh, you got to take into account the bigger picture of the Agusan River Basin. Technically, that's the third largest river system in the Philippines, encompassing regions 11 and 13. That's Davao and Caraga. What you have here in our town, your catch basin. And come to think of it, everything revolves around this catch basin. They say that life begins here. There can never ever be an Agusan del Sur without the Agusan Marsh.
Ano yan dato?
Ano, pangguan yan, pang dipinsa nga di ka maislay.
Tungkod.
Datu Artemio was selected as one of the leaders due to his Lumad lineage. The Lumad are some of the first wave of people to settle in the Philippines, specifically around Mindanao. Their ancestral land is often highly sought after, making them one of the most vulnerable ethnic groups in the country. They are also one of the few groups that have held on to their pre-colonial culture. As in most areas in the Philippines where there is a strong indigenous ancestry, most people with roles to play in the community also happen to have official government positions. Datu was previously an LGU official, and now his son is barangay captain. They both lead the people in Kaimpugan and its peatland, one of the many parts of the Agusan Marsh Wildlife Sanctuary. The relationship between indigenous religions and the Catholic Church is complex, marked by both historical tensions and reconciliation. Indigenous religions, often rooted in animism and oral traditions, are distinct from the Church's codified beliefs and practices. Just like when we were colonized, one culture doesn't usually completely erase the other. Parts of it are indigenized. So you'll find people praying to the Catholic God alongside other entities. Where people live with the land, these are still a common practice. Most of the people here are Catholic, but their own Lumad culture is still very strong, as it should be. These rituals are carried out to ensure safe passage and acceptance into the community.
What we have here within the Agusan Marsh Wildlife Sanctuary is the Kaimpugan peatland. The peatland, it covers just 3% of the Earth's surface. But according to the ICUN, they believe that peatland conserves 30% of the world's carbon, and that is twice as much carbon sequestered as compared to all the rainforests combined. The conservation of wetlands is crucial because it mitigates the impacts of climate change. If it is damaged, it releases tons of CO2 far greater than anything.
Ang tao rito sa amin, sa ngayon, nakukontrol pag nga kayo nandito na kami, nabantay na mo. Di palagi noon, nga yung tao, labas-pasok.
In order to uplift and protect our wetlands, the Society for the Conservation of Philippine Wetlands mobilizes advocates across the Philippines and the world to facilitate conversations and pioneer technical assistance. Together with them is the Protected Area Management Office, or PAMO, which manages the overall conservation of the Agusan Marsh. One of their efforts includes marshalling volunteers across all communities to guard the marsh, birthing the fearless group called Bantay Danao.
Sa bata pa mi, sa adlaw nga wala mi klase, eskwela, elementary. Ano mi diri magdula-dula mi, mangwa mi bunga sa kahoy, nagkandiis, maasim yan, nakain namin. Makikita namin yung mga unggoy, mga amo dito. At saka yung mga babuihas, at saka yung usa dito. Kasi hindi pa ito, wala pa ito. Parang ano pa doon sa ano ba, sa ilalim ng kahoy. Pero ngayon, iba na. Eh, sa init, hindi pa magparehas ang panahon. Na tao nga umaabuso ba.
People never mind talking of climate change in its first inception, before that Kyoto Protocol, way back 2005. But people began realizing the true value of its protection because we had a number of extreme river flooding like never before. We had an extreme river flooding in 2014, followed by an extreme river flooding in 2017. And just recently, in 2024, February 6 last year, by having seen it and experienced it firsthand, this Agusan Marsh serves as nature's kind of dam, protecting the adjacent localities on all those places downstream, more so Butuan City. Believe me, without the Agusan Marsh, there wouldn't be any place called Butuan City at all. People realize that we got to change something for the better, for if not, there would be far more extreme river flooding within Agusan del Sur.
Kining lugar na mo diri sa Pitlan, dako kayong area. So kami, mag-growing kami. Sa isang buwan, hindi ay naman ma-recover. Dako kayong kalahian sa unas ta karon. Lahi-lahi na ang nagturok ng mga klase nga mga sagbot. Dili pare sa una nga didto, malayo ka pa, makita ka na. Kay ang baha, may nagdala sa similya, galing doon, dalhin dito. Ito na, tumutubo na siya. Mas bugnaw sa una kung karon. Muna karon ang nahitabo ingon aning Pitlan namo nga naay problema kay tungod niya masunog. Kay sa una bugnaw ang panahon. Karon lahi nay 4-5 ka bulan diri nga init. So gamay problema sa kuan diri sa Kalasangan. So tungod sa kainit, spark na siya. Ito ang nasusunog. Pag mukrak yung maliit nga kahoy, parang mag-spark ba? Yun, sumisiga yan. Wala kami magagawa kasi kaabot kami dito, laki na. Mag-picture na lang kami. Tawag-tawag kami si LGU. Kasi ang fireman hindi man makapasok dito. Okay, usay, magdala kami ng ano, pagpagan lang namin dito, pag susunog dito kami. Hinahampas lang namin, pero hindi na kaya eh. Kaya palibutan na kami ng kalayo. Dasal na lang talaga.
Experience is the greatest teacher of us all. Come to think of it, the Agusan Marsh is overseen by 6 localities as well. When you talk of the Agusan Mars Wildlife Sanctuary, Talacogon is not alone. The LGUs of San Francisco, Rosario, Bunawan, Loreto, La Paz engages in the protection and the preservation of the peatland. It is just a common thing that everybody is obliged to do their part because this is their way of life. This is our way of life.
Padugang nakita ka kuyang si ini pa ipainom to bisita mismo kanamin na kinising-kasing ajaw kanan sa wadya. Gugma si ini apo.
Basta
Mismo
sabi
na anada noy.
nga ni tubig nga mga
Tiba.
sirena.
Hinang noy lang si ini para lang kana kig kayagak. Nakita tradisyon, nakita kalikat.
The Panlabuhan floating village is home to the Manoba tribe, families who've lived here for generations, moving with the rhythm of the water. Their homes rise and fall with the marsh, tethered but never fixed. You've probably heard of floating villages before. You're picturing houses on stilts, where the home is elevated enough that the water rarely touches the bottom. They are made to never meet. Not here. The houses are built on anchored floating bamboo platforms. When a typhoon hits and the water volume increases, the houses and everything around them simply swell with it. The water level can vary as much as 10 meters and is highly unpredictable as the flooding season has become erratic.
Sa ako lang ma'am, importante sa ako ang Agusan Mars. Musulti kog tinuod dili nga duha-duha. Diri ko na tao. Kung way Agusan Mars dili ko maminyo. Kay walay babae musugot sa mua. Kay walay may isaktong kayamanan. Ikapasigarbo namo sa mong asawa. Ang Agusan Mars mo ni among kayamanan. Mauning bulawan sa mo ang akong ipakita sa akong pamilya, sa akong anak.
Ito ang lugar na tinatawag na wala kang boss. Ikaw lang ang boss dito. Ano ka ng pangisda, tapos pagkabukas, mayroon ka ng huling isda.
Fishing is life here. They set their fish cages in the morning, leave them for the day, and return at dusk, hoping that the river has provided. Once caught, these are dried for consumption and to be sold. They've also dealt with an increase of an invasive water hyacinth species that clogs their passageways into the marsh and harms their livelihood. Daily, they fight for their way of life. Marites Babanto, the local tour guide, remembers a time when the marsh felt endless, but now it's getting smaller, drying up, and the storms are getting stronger.
Nung nagkamalay ako, mga 5-6 years, pinakamalawak pa talaga ito, parang dagat. Tapos, ang pinaka-memory ko yung nakikita ko pa talaga na parang virgin area pa talaga. Wala pang nasisira. Yung tubig malinis pa, mainom pa. Tapos marami pang isda. Kasi yun na time, nandyan pa ang mga ninuno namin.
The Agusan Marsh started making headlines when Lolong, the world's largest crocodile in captivity, was caught here. At 6.17 meters, he broke records, and then just over a year later, died in a cage too small for his legend. But long before Lolong, this place was already home. Datu recalls that his grandparents fled here to hide from the Japanese soldiers in World War II seeking refuge in the swamps. Marites says her grandfather Lolo Pidong eventually decided to settle here who came with their families, attracted by the peace and bountiful fishing the marsh provided. Their ancestors used to live in tree houses, but no matter how high the houses were, their dwellings always got swamped during floods and typhoons. That's when they had the thought of building the house on rafts. 3 generations later, their descendants are still here. The times have changed. Their ways need to adapt to commercial interests, erratic weather, and outside influences. But this is still their home.
Humanap kami ng paraan na paano kami makikita dito, paano malalaman ang mga problema dito. Yun, nagsimula na orient kami ng tuklas katutubo balik tribo, na dapat ipaglaban nyo ang tribo nyo. Yung sabi na walang sinumang makatulong sa inyo kundi mismo kami. Kaya simula noon, narinig na nila, nakita na nila kung ano ang mga problema namin.
Kay ako usa ko ka IP nga ingon nga ang IP way grado tu tinuod man tungod sa kalisod sa among pagpa-eskwela. Di mi dili mi makalahutay. Ang hangyo lang nako sa akong kagalingon ang among mga kaliwatan. Makatungtong lang bisan elementary, makatungtong lang sa high school, importante lang makabasa lang. Kay lisod mismo ako kabahin dili ko magpakaulaw. Maglisod galing kog basag English, maglisod galing kog istorya ug sa Tinagalog. Ang amo lang diha, hikapon na lang namo among kasing-kasing, importante lang maayo ka sa imong pagpuyo diri sa ibabaw sa kalibutan para di ka magkalisod. Kung walay simbahan, istorya jud nako tinuod, murag mawala jud mig maayo sa among panguna-una. Munang dako namo pagpasalamat una sa Ginoo, ulabi na sa mga tawo nga nagtabang kay ang among paningabuhian murag nagsabay ra jud mi sa panahon.
Yung nakasira, yung soil erosion, climate change, inaabuso ng ibang tao. Pagkabaha, pag tumataas ang tubig, ang madadamage itong Agusan Mars. Ang ibang lake dito, para ito na lang naiiwan, ang Kanimbaylan. Kasi yung dinaanan natin, yung Dagon Creek, ano lang yan, man-made. Pag tumataas ang tubig, lalo na yung Pablo, pasok lahat dito ang mga kahoy, lahat ng basura. Dahilan yan ng pag-aabuso ng ibang tao. Kailangan, kung mayroong pang gawin, gawin na agad.
So when you talk of climate changes, by all means, the national government has told us to do what we could, respectively, for the protection of the peatland or the Talakugon Lake. But even as we speak, the national government has yet to reconcile what would we be doing next so as to effectively secure these areas as a protected zone within the Agusan Mars Wildlife Sanctuary. Nothing is permanent in this world but change. We just hope that people would recognize more, or people would be inclined more of its protection and conservation rather than exploiting it for commercial use.
Pinakatatakutan namin dito as a community is yung mawawala to. Kung aabot dito, lupa na to. Pagdating doon, lupa na. Takot talaga kami, sayang.
Kung usa ka kadato, mahadlok ka magbinugoy. Murag mapil nako kung usa ka kadato, usa ka ginikanan, muhatag sa imong anak og maayo nga pagtudlo, maayo pagbuhat. Muna makingon ko, kung naapalay mapasahan sa katungdanan, akong ipasa kay ngano murag naatanan sa imo ang kabug-aton. Murag imo tanan ang sagot, imo tanan ang mga solusyon sa usa ka lugar. Pan makaingon ko sa kong kagalingon, tinuod man lisod, dili lisod kung na ang usa ka community nga magtinabangan.
People realize that there is far more to gain by protecting it rather than exploiting it. Without this Agusan Mars, extreme river flooding would somehow inundate all of the localities here. So it is managed by the DNR and the local government units as well, 6 of it. Now the PAMO serves as a foot soldier to check everything if all is well.
Parang improvement na kasi may LGU na yung sumalalay sa amin, makatulong sa amin kung anong problema namin. So, ang LGU nagsabi nga lagyan kami dito ng emergency nga water pump kaya para pagkasusunog may magagamit kami. Kasi nakatraining kami sa rescue. Yun ang kailangan namin para maprotektahan namin ang area. Bali wala sa amin, wala to lahat. Sayang. Oh. So, yung sumusunod namin nga mga bata, wala, sabi ni tatay, mayroon daw unggoy dyan. Wala. Kasi inabuso na eh. Ang kailangan namin, protektahan namin ang pitla namin dito. Hindi namin pababayaan. Sinasabihan namin ibang tao dito nga sana wag nilang masyadong abusuhan. Hindi man sa lahat nga kami lang. Muna among pinaka-importante yun niya. Ang tanan tao diri sa barangay nabo, nakahibalutanan sa among pamalao diri. Bahin sa training sa amoa gikan sa PAMU taga Paso ug sa LGU sa Mindro ug sa Sinro. Kami taga rito ayaw namin abusuhin yung ano sa Pitlan. Ano to eh? Parang ikalima na kami nga ano dito sa galing sa mga ninuno namin. Parang sakit ba? Pasalamat mi sa taga PAMU na organize mi nga bantay danaw. Para maprotektahan namin yung ano kinaiyahan dito, yung Pitlan namin. Ayaw namin mawala.
That is why we got to contribute respectively for its protection. Well, God is still the greatest architect of us all. This land may seem idle, but everything has its purpose.
Sana lahat ng tao nakita nila ang halaga ng binigay ng Panginoon.